Some stories may not be suitable for younger audience. Watch this video at your own risk. In this episode, we uncover a mission that never made it to the records, the Amityville haunted house case. Before we start the video, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second. It was the winter of 1974, just weeks after the DeFeo murders made the headlines, when my unit received orders that didn't officially exist. We were told nothing at first, just that a house in Amityville, New York, required immediate containment and investigation. Not security, not surveillance, containment. That word stuck with me like shrapnel under the skin. We were 6 men in total, led by Captain Harris, a man who'd served in Vietnam and carried the kind of authority that silenced questions before they were spoken. Still, the questions burned. Why was the Army sending us into a civilian neighborhood? Why in the dead of night, with unmarked trucks and weapons checked but not loaded? The papers had already written enough about the house. 6 members of the DeFeo family shot in their sleep by the eldest son. People whispered about devil worship, curses, demons. But none of that explained why the military was interested. We arrived just past midnight. The air bit cold, though there was no snow, only a damp chill that seemed to rise from the ground itself. The neighborhood was silent, too silent. Even the dogs, the ones that had barked their lungs out when our convoy rolled through earlier streets, had gone quiet. The house loomed ahead, 112 Ocean Avenue. Its windows were vacant eyes, a place already drenched in blood and rumor. But to me it looked tired, sagging walls, shutters hanging crooked. Yet the moment I stepped out of the truck, I felt something, like pressure against my chest, as though the house itself had drawn breath, waiting. "Move!" Captain Harris barked, snapping me out of it. "We're burning time." We crossed the yard in formation, boots crunching on damp gravel. My heart beat too fast, too loud in my own ears. I'd been in firefights before, ambushes, close calls. This felt different. There was no enemy here, no bullets waiting, and yet my skin crawled. Inside, the air was worse. Musty wood, rot, and something else sharp, metallic, like dried blood. The first floor looked empty, though the furniture remained. Chairs, a table, faded family photos. We fanned out, clearing room by room. Private Daniels muttered under his breath. "Feels like the walls are listening." "Shut it," Harris snapped. But he was right. Every creak, every breath echoed too long, too strange, as if the sound had nowhere to go but circle back at us. Then the first thing happened. We were moving through the hall when a chair scraped across the floor on its own. Not a fall, not a stumble, it slid. Deliberate, grinding wood against wood. Every one of us froze. I heard my own pulse in my ears. "Who moved that?" Harris demanded. "Sir, nobody touched it," I whispered. And it was true, we were all too far. We regrouped tighter after that, rifles raised though no bullets were chambered. The whispers started next low, just beyond hearing. Not words, not at first, more like the hiss of someone standing too close behind you. I turned more than once, sure I'd see one of my men there. Nothing, only shadow. In the dining room, a photograph on the table caught my eye. It showed the DeFeo family all smiling stiffly for the camera. But when I looked again, one of the faces seemed blurred. The ink smeared like it was rotting on the paper. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. For a moment, I thought the face had changed. "Eyes up," Harris snapped. We pushed deeper into the master bedroom. That's where I saw it. My flashlight beam cut across the bed, and there at the foot stood a shadow. A human shape, tall, shoulders hunched. But it wasn't solid. It was like smoke caught in the beam. "Contact," I shouted. The figure vanished. My light hit nothing but empty air. "False alarm," Harris growled, though his voice had a tremor. But it wasn't false. I knew what I saw. And worse, I knew I wasn't the only one. Private Wilson whispered, "It was standing right there." His voice broke. Harris silenced him with a glare, but I saw it in his eyes. He'd seen it too. By the time we regrouped on the landing, the tension was a living thing. We weren't just soldiers on orders anymore. We were intruders, trespassers in a place that didn't want us there. Then came the sound. From below, a deep, dragging noise, metal against stone, echoing up from the basement. Harris signaled us forward, his jaw clenched, but his hands shook as he raised his flashlight. The basement door was locked. Harris ordered it broken. Daniels and Wilson slammed their shoulders into the wood until the frame splintered. The stench hit us first, rot and old blood. My stomach clenched. The beam of my light revealed the concrete steps descending into black. And at the bottom, half in shadow, I swore I saw something move. Not a person, not quite. "Downstairs, now," Harris ordered. I didn't want to go. None of us did. But orders were orders. We descended one by one into the dark. The basement swallowed us whole. The scream cut through the dark like a blade. It was Daniels. His flashlight clattered against the concrete, rolling in circles until the beam landed on him. He wasn't hurt, not physically. He was pressed against the wall, hands trembling over his face. "I felt something," he stammered. "It touched me." "Bullshit," Harris snapped, though his own light shook in his hand. "Stay sharp." No panic, but Daniel's eyes, I'll never forget them. Wide, glassy, unfocused, like he'd seen something inside his head that didn't belong there. We pressed on, flashlights cutting through the stale air. The basement was a tomb, rusted pipes dripped from above, puddles spread across a cracked cement, and old furniture sat rotting in corners. But what froze me was the wall at the far end. It was smeared in dried blood. Not random stains, handprints, small ones, large ones, pressed deep into the surface, layered like desperate signatures of the damned. "Jesus Christ," Wilson muttered. "Eyes front," Harris barked. Near the wall lay a bundle of old belongings, clothing, toys, even a rosary. They looked like they'd been sitting there since the murders. But I knew enough about police evidence. Those items should have been collected, tagged, and stored years ago. Why were they still here? That's when the lights went out. All at once. Every flashlight, every bulb upstairs. Total black. I'll admit it, my heart nearly stopped. I couldn't see my own hand in front of my face. The dark was thick, suffocating, alive. And then whispers, clearer than before, right at my ear. "Go back!" I swung wildly, rifle up, but there was no one. Only the sound of Harris shouting, trying to keep us together. "Stay tight!" No one separates, but it was already too late. In the chaos, one of us disappeared. Corporal Mason. 1 second he was ahead of me, his boots splashing through water. The next his scream echoed, cut short, and he was gone. No footsteps, no dragging, no sound of struggle. Just gone. We searched for him in that choking dark, calling his name. Nothing. When the lights snapped back, Mason wasn't there. Only his rifle lying half submerged in a puddle. Harris ordered us upstairs. His face was stone, but his eyes betrayed him. Fear, real fear. We regrouped in the dining room, shaken. No one spoke for a long while. The silence was heavier than any battlefield I'd ever known. Finally, Harris broke it. "No one says a goddamn word of this outside, understood?" We nodded, but I knew it was already carved into each of us. That night was only the beginning. Looking back now, I realize how unprepared we were. The orders we received had been vague, deliberately so. A sealed envelope, hand-delivered to Harris 2 days earlier, with one line burned into my memory. Operation Quiet House, containment and report. No civilian disclosure, no briefing, no intelligence, nothing. Just coordinates and orders. I remember sitting in the barracks when Harris read it to us. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He never did. Orders were law. "Pack light," he said. "We move out in 48 hours. We didn't ask questions, though all of us thought them. Why the Army? Why not local police? Why a crime scene already processed months before? On the drive up to Amityville, Harris finally gave us a sliver of explanation. Official story is the house has been under observation. Locals report strange activity, noises, lights, disturbances. Higher-ups want confirmation. "Ghost Patrol," Daniels muttered, earning a glare. Wilson asked the question on all our minds. "Sir, why us? Why not MPS or investigators?" Harris hesitated, just for a second. Then he said, "Because we're expendable." The words dropped like stones in the truck. He didn't mean it as insult. He meant it as fact. No one spoke after that. Back in the house, hours after Mason vanished, I tried to steady my breathing, tried to convince myself it was all explainable. Maybe Mason panicked and ran. Maybe the house was filled with gases, hallucinations. That's what I told myself. But deep down, I knew better. It wasn't panic. It wasn't hallucination. Something had taken him. That night, we set up rotation. 2 on watch, the others resting. I drew second shift with Daniels. We sat near the front window, rifles across our laps, eyes on the dark street outside. Nothing moved, not even the wind. "Tell me you felt it," Daniels whispered after a while. "Felt what?" "In the basement." "That hand." It grabbed me, cold as ice. If I close my eyes, I can still feel it. I didn't answer, because part of me believed him. Daniels leaned closer. "Mason didn't just vanish. The house took him. You know it. We're not supposed to be here." "Keep your voice down," I muttered. But his words sank in, deep. Hours later, when Harris relieved us, I tried to sleep. But every time I shut my eyes, I saw those bloody handprints on the wall, and Mason's scream. By dawn, none of us felt rested. Morning brought no safety. If anything, daylight made the house worse. Its walls looked more decayed, its shadows sharper, as if the sun only revealed its sickness. Harris gathered us at the table. "We continue. We sweep every floor, every room. We finish this today." No one argued, but the looks we gave each other told the truth. We didn't want to go deeper. Still, we moved. Soldiers don't get choices. The second floor was where things changed again. We entered a bedroom, pink wallpaper, dolls on the shelf, a child's room. Dust hung thick in the air. Wilson froze by the bed. His face went pale. "What is it?" Harris asked. Wilson pointed. On the pillow lay a small indentation, fresh, as though someone had just been lying there. We hadn't touched it. No one had. Then from the corner of the room, we heard it. A laugh, high-pitched, a child's laugh. It echoed, bouncing off the walls surrounding us. Daniel's curse stumbling back. My own hands shook as I raised my rifle, aiming at shadows. The laugh faded. Silence returned. But the pillow stayed indented. And I swear the doll on the shelf had turned its head. We left that room fast, but the damage was done. Our nerves were shredded. Every step up there felt like walking into a trap. In the master bedroom, we found another photograph. This one cracked and faded, showing the DeFeo parents on their wedding day. But someone had carved into it, scratched words with something sharp. "Still here." Harris ordered it bagged. But where would he bag it to? We had no evidence kits, no cameras, only notebooks and flashlights, which meant this wasn't about collecting proof. This was about witnessing. They didn't want evidence. They wanted testimony, ours. That's when I realized the truth. We weren't investigating the house. We were bait. Wilson's scream cut through the house, snapping us into motion. We barreled down the stairs, boots pounding the wood, rifles up, do not loaded. I remember thinking how useless they felt, cold metal in my hands, against whatever was in that house. We found Wilson in the dining room, pale, shaking, pointing at the window. "Someone outside," he gasped, looking in at me. "I swear to God." Harris stormed forward. "What did you see?" Wilson swallowed, his lips trembled. "It was Mason." Every one of us froze. "You're sure?" Harris demanded. Wilson nodded fast. His face, right there in the glass. He was smiling, sir. Smiling like he knew something. We turned as one toward the window. Nothing. Just the quiet street, lined with dark houses. Daniels muttered, "Mason's gone." That wasn't him. "Then what was it?" Wilson shot back. No one answered, because we all knew it was worse not knowing. We secured the downstairs again, though secure didn't mean anything anymore. Every corner felt like it hid something waiting to lunge. Every shadow stretched too far. Harris pulled us into the living room. His voice was steel, but his hands twitched as he lit a cigarette. "Listen." We finish the sweep, top to bottom. We log everything. Then we leave. Orders said nothing about staying overnight. I could feel it, his control was cracking. He was pushing us forward not out of duty, but because turning back now meant admitting he was scared. And if Harris was scared, we were all doomed. The next encounter came in the hallway. Daniels went rigid, pointing at the wall. "Sir, look. Claw marks, long, deep, carved straight into the plaster. Not old, fresh. White dust still crumbled at the edges." "Animal," Harris said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Too high up," Daniels whispered. The marks were 7 feet from the floor, higher than any dog, higher than any man could reach without a ladder. We stared, hearts pounding. Then something banged above us, heavy, like a body dropping. We sprinted upstairs, weapons ready. The sound had come from the master bedroom. The door was shut. It hadn't been before. Harris raised his hand, counted down. 3, 2, 1. He kicked the door open. Empty. The bed was perfectly made. No dust disturbed. But on the mirror above the dresser, smeared in condensation, were words. "Leave now." Daniels muttered a prayer under his breath. Wilson whispered, "Why would it warn us?" No one replied. By then, the house wasn't just scaring us. It was playing with us, pushing us to the edge, then pulling back, letting us wonder what was real. That's when Harris changed the plan. "We regroup," he said. "We set up in one room. No splitting up. Whatever this is, it wants us divided." So we pulled into the living room, barricading doors with furniture. We sat in a loose circle, rifles on our knees, eyes darting everywhere. The silence between us was heavy. Wilson finally broke it. "Sir, you think command knew? You think they knew this wasn't normal?" Harris blew smoke, eyes fixed on the dark beyond the window. "Orders are orders. That's all I know." But I caught at the slip, the way his jaw tightened when he said it. He knew more, or suspected more. Daniels leaned toward me, whispering so only I could hear. "They sent us here to die. You feel it, don't you? Like we're not supposed to walk out." I wanted to deny it. I couldn't. It was past midnight when the real break happened. We were sitting in silence when Wilson shot to his feet, eyes wide, staring at the doorway. "Mason," he breathed. We all turned, and there he was, Corporal Mason, standing in the hall. His uniform was torn, soaked dark at the chest, his skin pale as chalk, his eyes wrong, too wide, too still. "Corporal," Harris said, voice tight, "step forward." Mason didn't move. He just stood there, staring. His lips stretched into a grin that looked painful, skin pulling too tight over his face. Then he whispered, voice hollow, echoing in the walls. "Why didn't you help me?" Daniels raised his rifle, hands trembling. "Jesus Christ!" "Hold fire!" Harris barked. But Mason or whatever wore his face began to move. Slow steps, one after the other, into the room. The air dropped cold. My breath fogged. The smell of rot filled my nose. I swear I heard voices whispering his name. Dozens of them, all overlapping, like the house itself was calling him. He stepped closer, and closer, until he was only feet away. Then he vanished. Gone. Just gone. No door opened. No floor creaked. 1 second he was there, the next he wasn't. The silence that followed was worse than the vision. Daniels broke first, shouting, "That wasn't him! That wasn't Mason! We're leaving, sir! We're leaving now!" Harris snapped back, voice sharp. "No one moves until I say. Do you understand?" But his voice cracked. And in that crack, I realized Harris had lost control. The hours that followed were hell. Whispers slid under the door. Shadows moved across the walls with no source. Wilson swore he saw a face grinning at him from the ceiling. Daniel started muttering prayers nonstop, rocking in his chair. I kept watch by the window. Outside, the street was empty. But sometimes in the reflection of the glass, I saw figures behind us. Men, women, children, all staring. When I turned, the room was empty. Only us. By dawn, none of us were the same men who walked in. That morning, Harris called it. "We're done. Sweep's complete. No more time wasted." We pull out. Relief washed over me, but it didn't last. Because even as he spoke, the house seemed to react. The walls creaked, the floor shuddered, and upstairs a door slammed shut with such force the whole structure shook. It didn't want us to leave. We packed what little gear we had, keeping rifles close. Every step toward the door felt like wading through quicksand. Wilson was the first to the threshold. He yanked the front door open and stopped dead. "Sir," his voice broke. "Sir, it's not outside anymore." We crowded around. The street was gone, the houses, the sky. All that lay beyond the door was black, a void, empty, endless. We slammed the door shut, hearts pounding. "What the hell is this?" Daniel screamed. No one had an answer. The house had closed around us, trapped us. We weren't leaving. Not yet. We froze at the sound of that voice. Mason's voice. Soft, steady, drifting up from the basement like smoke through a vent. "Daniel, Wilson, Captain." Each name rolled out, calm, drawn out, as if he were smiling while saying them. Daniel's backed away, shaking his head. No, he's dead. That's not him." Harris raised his hand for silence. His eyes locked on the basement door, still swinging gently, as if something had just slipped through it. "Stay tight," he ordered, voice low, but his voice wasn't steady anymore. The whispers grew louder, overlapping. Mason's voice turned into others, men, women, children. Dozens of voices all spilling from the basement, calling our names. I gripped my rifle tighter, useless as it was. My palms were slick with sweat. I didn't want to go back down there. None of us did. But Harris gave the order anyway. "We clear it. We don't leave a man behind." He was lying to himself. Mason wasn't coming back. But Harris needed control, and control meant pretending this was still a mission we could finish. So we went. The steps groaned under our boots as we descended again, flashlights shaking in our hands. The smell hit us even stronger this time. Not just rotten blood, but something sulfurous, like burnt matches. Halfway down, Daniel stopped cold. "Look," he whispered. The basement wall glistened. Fresh blood ran down the cracks, dripping onto the floor. "Keep moving," Harris muttered. His voice was steady, but I saw his finger twitch against the rifle's trigger guard. At the bottom, our lights swept across the room. The handprints on the wall were gone, wiped clean, but in their place, new words smeared in blood. "Stay forever," Wilson cursed under his breath. "We need to get out, sir. Now. I don't care if the door's black. I'd rather jump into nothing than..." Then the voices cut him off. They weren't distant anymore. They were right there, circling us. I spun in place, flashlight whipping across the concrete. Shadows leapt and scattered, too fast, too many. And then Mason stepped out. He emerged from the far corner, uniform still soaked, skin pale. But this time he was moving, slow, deliberate. His eyes locked on us. Harris raised his rifle. "Corporal, stop where you are." Mason did stop, but his mouth twitched into that smile again. "You left me," he said. His voice was wrong, echoing, hollow. Daniel shouted, "You're not him! You're not Mason!" Mason tilted his head like a broken puppet. "Then who am I?" Before anyone could answer, the basement lights' bare bulbs hanging from chains flickered on. Not by our flashlights, the actual lights. And in that flicker, we saw them. Dozens of figures filling the room. Children, women, men. Their faces pale, eyes black, mouths hanging open, all staring at us. Then darkness again. The bulbs snapped off. Only Mason remained. He took a step forward. Another. Harris barked again, "Do not move!" But Mason didn't listen. He lunged. Daniels fired first. His rifle cracked in the dark, deafening. The muzzle flash lit Mason's face for an instant. Twisted, grinning. Then he was gone. Not hit, not dropped. Gone. Daniels kept firing, rounds slamming into concrete, sparks flying. Harris tackled him, wrenching the rifle away. "Stop! Stop it!" But I couldn't stop staring at the corner where Mason had stood. Because even though he was gone, his grin lingered in my mind like an afterimage burned into my eyes. We stumbled back upstairs, rattled to the core. Harris slammed the basement door shut, dragging a chair against it. His face was pale with sweat. He didn't even bark orders anymore. "We hold here," he muttered. "We don't go down again." Daniels paced the room, muttering prayers, rubbing his face with shaking hands. Wilson sat in a corner, staring at the floor, lips moving silently. I sat by the window, watching the black void beyond the glass. It hadn't changed. Still nothing outside. No street, no sky, just endless dark. I wondered if we'd ever leave. Hours passed. At least I think they did. Time didn't feel right in that house. Clocks ticked too slow, too fast, hands skipping. My wristwatch froze at 0300 and never moved again. The house groaned around us. Wood cracking, pipes clanging. Every sound made us flinch. Then Wilson spoke. "Sir," he said quietly, "you knew." Harris looked up, narrowing his eyes. "What are you talking about?" Wilson's voice cracked. "You knew this wasn't a normal op. You knew we weren't supposed to walk out." Harris didn't answer. I saw the truth in his silence. He'd known from the start. The envelope, the word containment, the lack of weapons, the lack of gear. We weren't there to fight. We were there to observe, to feed the house. Wilson stood, shaking with rage. "You son of a bitch! You sent Mason to die. You sent all of us." Before he could finish, the lights flickered, and every mirror in the room shattered. Glass exploded, raining across the floor. In each shard, I saw a reflection. Not of me, not of my men. Faces I didn't know. Pale, hollow-eyed, whispering silently. Daniel screamed, clutching his arm, blood dripping where glass cut him. Wilson backed against the wall, eyes wild. "We're dead. We're already dead." And maybe he was right. Then came the sound from upstairs. Footsteps, slow, heavy, moving across the second floor. We looked at each other. No one wanted to move. But Harris straightened, gripping his rifle. "We clear it." "No," Daniels whispered. "No more. I'm not going up there." "Orders!" Harris snapped. But the word had lost its power. I should have refused. I should have stayed put. But habit runs deep. Years of discipline forced me to rise, forced my legs to climb the stairs behind him. The hallway stretched too long, like the house was bigger inside than out. Doors lined each side. Everyone stood slightly open. The footsteps stopped. We inched forward, flashlights cutting beams into each room. Empty, empty, empty. Then at the end of the hall, the last door slammed shut. Harris moved fast, kicking it open. Inside was a small study, dusty shelves, broken chairs, and on the desk, laid out neatly, a folder. We approached slowly, rifles raised. The folder was military issue, stamped across the front in red ink, classified Operation Quiet House. I stared at Harris. He didn't speak. His jaw locked tight. He opened the folder. Inside were photographs, black and white shots of the Amityville house, taken years before the murders. Pages of typed reports, witness testimonies about voices, moving objects, disappearances. One photo showed the basement wall smeared with blood, but the date in the corner was 1969, 5 years before the DeFeo killings. My stomach dropped. This house had been active long before the murders, long before we got here. The murders weren't the start, they were just another chapter. I heard my own voice in that study, not a recording, not a trick of memory. My voice, from the corner of the room, soft and patient, saying my name the way a mother might wake a sleeping kid. I turned my light. The corner was empty. "Stay on me," Harris said. His jaw was tight. "No one talks to anything that sounds like themselves." That's an order. Down the hall, a door creaked. Then another. It was like the house was opening its mouth. I looked back at the folder on the desk. Operation Quiet House. Photos, reports, dates. And at the bottom, a page with a short list, single-spaced. I ran my finger down the names. Missing, missing, missing. Same house, different years, no recoveries. "Sir," I said, my voice low, "we're next on that list." He didn't deny it. He closed the folder and slipped it inside his jacket like he'd been waiting for this moment since the envelope arrived. "We go to the basement," he said. "We find the source. Then we end it." "End it how?" Wilson asked. Harris looked at him. "However we have to." The house groaned, long and slow, as if it had heard him. We moved back to the stairs. As we passed the room with the pink wallpaper, the doll on the shelf turned its head to follow us. No one commented. No one had the breath. At the bottom of the stairs, the basement door stood open, like someone was holding it for us. Cold air breathed up from below. My skin prickled. I felt watched. Not by one thing, but by a crowd. The kind of stare you feel before a riot. We went down. The bulbs flickered to life again on their own dim, trembling. Our footsteps rang too loud. The blood words on the wall had changed. I don't know when. Maybe while we were upstairs? Maybe the house was writing as we walked. "Open me!" "What does that mean?" Daniels whispered. I didn't have to answer. We all heard it. A low thumping, steady and dull, from behind the far wall. A heartbeat. It wasn't loud, but it was deep, the kind of sound you feel in your ribs. "Tools," Harris said. We didn't have sledgehammers. No kit, no explosives. But in a corner under a rotten tarp was a box of old maintenance gear. Rusted pry bar, cracked mallet, a dented chisel. Someone had left them here long ago, like the house gave workers just enough to keep the story going. We worked the mortar. Dust filled the air. The heartbeat grew louder, quicker, like we were making it excited. The bricks were old and crumbly, but they fought us anyway. The chisel slipped and nicked Daniel's hand. He hissed and wiped the blood on his pants. The wall seemed to react, the heartbeat stuttering like it could smell him. "Keep going," Harris breathed. The first brick gave, then the second. Cold air rushed out wet and sweet, like rotting fruit and old perfume. I gagged. We widened the hole until we could squeeze through. Behind the wall was a narrow room painted a dull, ugly red. It wasn't paint. It was old and soaked and wrong. A room the color of old, clotted red. The locals had whispered about it. I'd read a line or two in a paper months back, but seeing it was worse than any rumor. In the middle sat a chair bolted to the floor, leather straps rotted to threads. Around it, shelves with small boxes, cigarette tins, match cases, a child's music box with a cracked ballerina. Personal things, tokens, like trophies. And at the back, an old oil drum sank into a pit in the floor, feeding a pipe that disappeared into the wall. The drum wasn't hooked up. It was there like an altar. Wilson touched the rim and jerked his hand back. "Warm," he said. There was no heat in that room, no furnace, no flame. But the drum was warm. Harris stood very still. When he spoke, his voice was different. Not the bark, not the steel. Quiet, honest. "I got a side note with the envelope," he said. "No briefing, no intel. Just a line I didn't repeat. If the interior seals and the environment is compromised, open the room and bleed the house." "Bleed it how?" I asked. He looked at the drum. "With fire." Daniels laughed once, a dry, broken sound. "We don't have fuel. We don't have a match." Harris reached into his jacket and pulled out a small metal tube, a signal flare. He turned it over in his hand, ashamed. "They told me to bring one thing," he said. "Not ammo, not radios. This." We stared at him. The truth landed heavy. He hadn't brought it to signal for help. He'd brought it to burn. Wilson's voice shook. "You knew from the start." "I suspected," Harris said. He didn't defend himself. He didn't apologize. He just stood there like a man who'd been carrying a coffin on his shoulders since the orders landed. The heartbeat pounded. The red walls seemed to breathe. I swallowed. "If we light it, do we get out?" Harris looked at me. For once, he didn't have an order. "I don't know," he said. We stood there in the red room, listening to the heartbeat of a house. I thought of Mason. I thought of the names in the folder. I thought of the black void outside the front door, swallowing the street. "Do it," I said. Harris nodded. He pulled the cap off the flare and scraped it. It sputtered, then bloomed into blazing white. Shadows jumped. The room threw back the light like it was drunk on it. We tore open boxes for anything that would catch. The music box, old rags, old books with water-warped pages that somehow still burned. The oil in the drum caught slow at first, then roared. Heat flooded the room. The heartbeat rose fast, panicked. The house groaned, deeper than before, like steel twisting. Daniels backed away, eyes wide. "It's angry," he said. "Good," Harris said. He grabbed the oil line with his bare hands and wrenched the valve open. The pipe coughed and spat. The flame climbed. Smoke rolled up and sucked into cracks in the ceiling as if the house was breathing it in. A sound rose from the walls. Not wind, not fire. A chorus. Crying, laughing, wailing all at once. It pressed into my skull, made my eyes water. "Out!" Harris shouted. "Back to the living room. We hold by the front door. If that void is still out there, we push through it." We stumbled back into the basement proper, heat licking our necks. Smoke dragged against the ceiling. The blood words on the wall bubbled, then ran like fresh paint. As we hit the stairs, the bulbs exploded one by one. Pop, 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 glass raining on our helmets. We rushed up, boots barely finding the steps. The air on the first floor was sharp and hot, the house shuddering in steady waves. At the living room, the front door stood shut. The glass in its panes had turned black like obsidian. I grabbed the knob. It was ice cold. My skin stuck to it. "Open it," Harris said. I pulled. It didn't budge. The house laughed. It came from the hall, the ceiling, the floor, a high, bright laugh like a child hiding behind the couch, hands over their mouth. Wilson lost it. He bolted for the kitchen. "Back door!" he yelled. "Wilson!" "Hold!" Harris shouted. But Wilson was already there, wrenching at the handle. The door swung wide. On the other side, not a void, a yard, the street beyond. Night sky, pale and thin, stars like pins. For a second, my chest unclenched. Then the yard moved. The grass curled in waves, the ground breathing, the fence bending like it was made of wet bone. The sky pulsed, and the stars blinked like eyes. Wilson staggered back. The door slammed on its own, inches from his face. "Front," Harris said. His voice had no room for panic anymore, only purpose. We stay together. We pick one door and we go. On three. We crowded the front. The heat came up from behind us in a sheet, the fire running through the beams, the red room feeding it. The house trembled so hard the frames on the walls tumbled and cracked. In every broken photo, faces moved in slow, jerky loops. "Ready," Harris said. 1, 2, something grabbed my ankle. Cold fingers, thin as wire, wound around my boot and yanked. I went down hard, my chin cracking against the floor. I saw it out of the corner of my eye, a small hand, pale and clinging, sliding up from the gap beneath the floorboards. A child's hand. I kicked free, scrambling, breath gone. Daniels hauled me up by my collar. "Move!" he shouted, voice shredding. Harris hit 3 and we pulled. The door ripped open. Outside, the street was back. Real this time. The houses, the lamppost, a car with frost on its windshield. The air was freezing and clean. My lungs hurt, sucking it in. "Go!" Harris shoved Wilson through first, then Daniels. Smoke chased us. Sparks floated out into the night like fireflies. I turned to help Harris. He wasn't moving. He stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, face lit orange by the fire behind him. His eyes were calm in a way I had never seen. "Sir," I grabbed his sleeve. "We have to go." He didn't look at me. He looked at the house. "Not all at once," he said. "What?" "If it feeds on us together, it pulls us back together." He pushed me through the door with a hard shove. "Get them clear. I'll close behind. Move." I stumbled onto the porch, almost fell down the steps. Wilson and Daniels were in the yard, coughing, bent over. The night felt wrong, the sky too close, but it was real enough to breathe. "Captain," I shouted, turning back. He stood framed in the doorway, smoke curling around his head like a crown. The house shuddered again, beams screaming, windows popping in bursts. I saw the stairs behind him glow red as the fire climbed. The sound in the walls turned from laughter to a low, furious moan. "Go," he said. Something moved behind him, not a person, a shape, tall and thin, all angles, leaning out from the hallway like a shadow made heavy. It put a hand on Harris's shoulder, long fingers, too many joints. Harris didn't flinch. He stared at me like he was trying to press his last order into my skull. "If the street holds, you run. You don't look back." "Sir," my throat closed. He shut the door. The house roared. The windows went white with fire. The roof bent in the middle like a spine breaking. Heat rolled off it in waves, the front steps popping under my boots. Smoke billowed, then was sucked straight down like someone inhaled the whole house at once. Wilson grabbed my arm. "We have to go." Daniels coughed until he gagged. He said, "Run." We ran. Maybe 30 feet, maybe 60. I don't know. The street warped under us like we were running uphill in a dream. The lamppost stretched taller, then snapped back short. Our shadows chased us in long black knots. Behind us, the house screamed again. I looked back. I know he told me not to. I know, but I looked. I saw the front door. It was open again. The fire behind it made a bright tunnel, all the way to the red room. In that light, something moved across the entryway, quick, spider-like. And then there was Mason, standing in the flames, skin blistering, smiling that same smile. He lifted his hand and waved at me, slow, friendly. I ran harder, legs shaking, lungs burning. Wilson cursed and stumbled. I hauled him up by his vest and shoved him forward. Daniels tripped on the curb and went down on his knees, breathing like his chest was broken. We reached the truck. It was there, gray and solid, as if we'd parked it minutes ago. Frost rimmed the mirrors. The world felt thin, but it held. I yanked the door. It opened. The keys were in the ignition. I don't know who left them there. I don't care. I got Wilson in the passenger seat, dragged Daniels into the back. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I looked up one last time at the house. The flames punched through the roof in a pillar. The top floor sagged. Then a face pressed against the windshield. Not outside. Inside. A woman. Hair wet and black. Eyes like holes burned into paper. Her breath fogged the glass from the inside. She mouthed words I couldn't hear. I jerked back, slamming into the seat. She was gone. The glass cleared. The cab was empty except for me and Wilson. Both of us frozen. "Start it," Wilson whispered. "Please start it." I turned the key. The engine coughed, then caught. The house groaned. The porch collapsed. Something heavy slammed the truck bed from behind, like a palm the size of a door. "Go!" Daniels yelled from the back, voice ragged. I dropped it into gear. The wheels spun, then found purchase. We shot forward. The lamppost blurred. The street curved. The night opened like a wound. I checked the rear view. The house was a tower of fire, the sky over it turning orange, black sparks rising and dying. For a heartbeat, I saw a figure standing in the doorway, haloed by flames, shoulders square, head high. Then the second floor fell, and everything turned to smoke. We drove. I don't know how long. Minutes that felt like days. The road straightened, the air thinned, the stars turned normal. Wilson cried without sound, shoulders shaking. Daniels lay in the back, eyes open, staring at the roof, lips moving like he was saying a name over and over. I eased the truck to the side and killed the lights. My hands would not unclench from the wheel. I pried them off finger by finger. No one spoke. We couldn't. If we said it out loud, it would become real. And if it became real, then the house would hear us and pull us back. Something tapped on the side window. 3 slow knocks. I turned my head, throat tight. Nothing there. "Just settle," I whispered, though my voice wasn't steady. "We wait for dawn." We wait. Wilson nodded, biting his lip. He wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve and left a dark smear I didn't want to identify. From the back, Daniel's voice came small and flat. "Where's the captain?" I closed my eyes. The smell of smoke clung to my clothes. My ears rang with the sound of the house crying inside its own fire. I saw that hand on Harris's shoulder. I saw him shut the door. I opened my mouth to answer. The radio crackled on by itself. A voice came through, warm, calm, like an instructor on a range day. "Unit Bravo, status." A pause, paper rustled on the other end. "Confirm containment." I stared at the radio. We hadn't touched it since we parked. The dial wasn't even set to our command frequency. The needle slid across the channels by itself and settled like it had always been there. Wilson swallowed. Don't answer," he whispered. The voice came again. "Unit Bravo, confirm containment." I reached for the handset. I don't know why. Habit, duty, the last thread holding me to a version of the world where orders made sense. My fingers closed on the mic. A child laughed softly from the footwell by my boots. My hand froze. The radio hissed for a long time after Harris's voice faded. None of us touched it. None of us moved. We just sat there in the truck. 3 survivors staring at the dark road like children hiding from a storm. I wanted to believe the fire had ended it, that the house was nothing but smoke and ash now, but I couldn't shake the sound of that laugh, the feel of that child's hand clawing my boot, the image of Mason waving at me from the fire. It wasn't over. Not for us. We drove at first light. The road looked normal again, the lamppost steady, the houses quiet. When we passed Ocean Avenue, there was no fire, no rubble. The house stood the way it always had, windows blank, siding pale, as if nothing had happened. Daniels cursed under his breath. "It's still there." Wilson just shut his eyes. I drove faster. We made it back to base before nightfall. Nobody spoke the whole trip. Our uniforms stank of smoke. My hands shook on the wheel until the engine cut and the truck died. Men in plain clothes met us at the gate. Not MPs, not officers we knew. Suits, dark ties. They took our rifles, took our packs, and told us to follow. We didn't argue. We were too numb to argue. They led us to a windowless room with metal chairs and a single table. One by one, they sat us down across from a tape recorder and asked the same questions in the same calm voice. "What did you see? What did you hear? Did you recover anything unusual?" Every time we tried to explain Mason, the voices, the black outside, the red room, they stopped the tape, rewound, and told us to answer again, this time with clarity. They wanted facts, not fear. They wanted the story clean, stripped of what we felt. Wilson cracked first. He slammed his fists on the table, shouting that the house was alive, that Mason was still in there, that Harris had burned inside with it. They dragged him out by his arms. I never saw him again. Daniels lasted longer, but he started shaking halfway through, muttering prayers, begging them to listen. They sedated him. The next day I heard he'd been transferred to a medical facility. Which one, no one said. That left me. When it was my turn, I lied. I said we swept the house, found nothing unusual, heard no voices, saw no shadows. Mason died in the line of duty. Circumstances unclear. Captain Harris stayed behind to secure the scene. They nodded, they wrote it down. They let me go. A week later, they handed me an honorable discharge, signed by no one I recognized. No ceremony, no medals, just a file and a handshake from a man whose name I'll never remember. Daniels and Wilson were gone. Harris and Mason were dead. And me, I was alive, but I wasn't free. Because every night when I closed my eyes, I heard the laugh. Sometimes it was a child's. Sometimes it was Mason's. Sometimes it was mine. Months passed. Newspapers ran stories about the Amityville house again. Ghost hunters. Families moving in and out. Books being written. Movies being pitched. None of them knew. The official file, the real one, was locked away somewhere under military stamp. Redacted lines, black ink, words no one outside would ever read. And us, the survivors, we weren't part of the record. One evening I got a letter. No return address, no name. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Containment achieved. Debrief complete. Do not speak of the basement. At the bottom, unsigned, was a line that made my blood run cold. You did your duty. Proceed as if nothing happened. I burned the letter, but I couldn't burn the memory. It's been years now, and I still feel the weight of that house. Sometimes I wake in the night and swear my bedroom walls are breathing. Sometimes I hear Harris's voice on the radio when I drive past static. And sometimes when I'm too tired to fight it, I dream of Ocean Avenue. The house is always there. Windows blank, porch sagging, waiting, and every time the front door opens. I've tried 1,000 times to tell myself it wasn't real, that we were tired, scared, caught in some nightmare haze. But every time I close my eyes, I know it was real. Too real. I wasn't supposed to make it out of that house. None of us were. The orders, the secrecy, the missing gear. It was never about the mission. We weren't there to investigate. We were there to be swallowed. And yet somehow I slipped through. Maybe because Harris pushed me out. Maybe because the house wanted me alive, to carry the story like a sickness. I don't know, but I do know this. It didn't let me go. It never will. I still hear Mason, sometimes in crowds, sometimes in quiet rooms. That laugh stretched too wide across a dead face. I've caught my reflection once or twice, just a trick of the light, but it grinned back at me, even when I wasn't smiling. I see Daniels in my dreams, rocking in that chair, whispering prayers. I see Wilson pounding on the table, begging men in suits to listen before they dragged him off. I see Harris standing tall with a hand on his shoulder, closing the door on me like he'd been waiting his whole life to make that choice. And I hear the house, steady and patient, breathing in the dark. They tried to wipe us out of the record. No files, no medals, no graves marked with truth. But there's no wiping what we saw, no erasing what that house did to us. I live with it every day. I wake at odd hours, and sometimes I smell smoke. Sometimes I hear footsteps upstairs when I'm alone. Sometimes the phone rings, and when I pick up, all I hear is a child's giggle before the line dies. I tell myself it's in my head, but deep down, I know it's the house, reaching, waiting. I don't go near New York anymore. I don't drive through Long Island, but I see the pictures sometimes, news stories, ghost tours, kids daring each other to snap photos on Ocean Avenue. They laugh. They say it's just a story, just a haunted house. They don't understand. The DeFeo murders weren't the beginning. Our mission wasn't the first. That house has been feeding for decades, maybe longer. Families, soldiers, workers, it doesn't care who. It takes what it wants, when it wants. And the worst part? It's protected, hidden under layers of official denial. Every strange death, every report, every missing file all covered. The house survives because someone, somewhere wants it to. Maybe they study it. Maybe they use it. Maybe it's part of something bigger. I stopped asking those questions long ago because the answers are worse than silence. I think about Harris a lot, how calm he looked at the end, how certain. He knew the house would take him. Maybe that was his way of keeping us alive. But I also wonder if it ever let him die at all. What if he's still in there, walking those halls, leading squads of shadows, calling names the way he called ours? What if Mason is beside him, still smiling in the firelight, waiting for the next unit to arrive? What if, in some way, I never really left? I'm telling this now because silence is worse. Silence gives the house more power. At least if the words are out there, someone else will know. Someone will hear. Maybe you. Maybe you'll laugh it off. Call it a ghost story, a soldier's trauma. That's fine. I don't need you to believe me. But if one night you find yourself on Ocean Avenue, staring up at that house and the air feels heavy and the windows look back at you, turn around. Don't step inside. Don't listen to the whispers. Don't follow the voice calling your name. Because once you cross that threshold, the house remembers you, and it never lets go. I was told to forget, to bury it, to act like it never happened. But forgetting doesn't work. The truth claws its way back. The truth waits in the walls. The Amityville house isn't haunted. Haunted things fade. This thing grows and it's alive, and it's still hungry. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think really happened to Captain Harris when he stayed behind in the house?